All right, thanks for tuning in to the OFN Today with Mark Lawrence of Covers.com for this Friday, the 29th of November, 2019, on the Our Lads Football Radio Network at ourlads.com. So, Mark, I hope you enjoyed your Thanksgiving, both at the dinner table and on television.
Well, I did just that, and if I had a napkin close to me, I'd probably wipe off a little bit of that pumpkin pie
Oh,
and
yeah.
whipped cream that I overindulged in.
There you go.
But I really did enjoy the day nonetheless. It was family, food, and football and friends, so it was a great day.
And how about that? 3 road teams getting the win on Thanksgiving Day and almost 3 covering if it wasn't for the ineptness of the Chicago Bears offense.
Well, you know, covering in a sense because that game just absolutely murdered the bookmakers.
Ugh.
That couldn't have been a worse result for them because that game was opened up at 2 or 2.5 and closed at 5, 5.5, and they just got absolutely killed as it fell in between. So it was probably the horror game of the year for the bookmakers. One, because it fell that way, and two, because it was a prime time game, Thanksgiving Day, when it was the only game
That's right.
in the National Football League being played. So they will end up getting a lot of play on that, and like I say, they literally got destroyed in that football game.
Yeah, and look, another team comes through for their new quarterback. As you mentioned many times on this show, that first week, that first game, no matter who the quarterback is, if he's going out there for the first time, the team is gonna there's a little bit of a jolt that you're gonna get from the team. And look, the kid Blau played a lot better than anybody thought. But that Chicago Bear defense is nothing like the defense that they had last year under Vic Fangio.
No question about that. The Bears were beatable that day. They've been beatable most of the year. And it was nice to see Detroit get around Matt Blau, who, by the way, was a story all unto himself. I don't know if you recall his days at Purdue.
Yes.
Remember the young kid that had the cancer? And
Yes.
he was his right hand guy. He was his go-to guy, and he was really heart touching and warming to listen to him talk about him and be in those videos with him. So it was really really nice, touching story to see Matt Blau succeed on Thanksgiving Day.
Yeah,
Although they didn't get the win, but the bottom
yeah.
line is he played really well.
Yeah, you couldn't watch any Purdue football last year and not follow the story of the kid with the cancer, because I mean they milked that story for as long as they could, and it was working until the bowl game.
Yeah.
And that was just an embarrassment last year in the bowl game against Auburn, when Gus Malzahn decided to take over calling duties again, and Purdue got demolished. It's one of those typical situations in bowls that just drive you crazy from year to year. And I don't remember who you had in that bowl game, but it's just sometimes it's very difficult to judge bowl games because you just don't know which team is motivated, what are the motivations, who's going to get suspended, who's doing too much partying, who really wants the game, who's disappointed. I mean, it's just so many factors that go into bowl games.
Yeah, in inordinate amount of numbers and facts go into bowl games, and we publish a college bowl report, which is very very popular, and we get knee deep into it with our database, and the database doesn't quit turning out numbers. It just churns them and churns them and churns them because there's so much involved in bowl games. Depending upon the opposition, the conferences, the coaches, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So every bowl game is like a snowflake. It's different all unto itself. So you have to handicap those bowl games individually each and every time.
When does that come out, the bowl report?
Well, it's generally we work on that. Obviously, number one, we have to know the bowl pairings. So that will be after the Army Navy game, and generally the week after the Army Navy game is when we put that out. So the week before the Army Navy game, most of the pairings are made. Whether Army or Navy are involved in that equation is usually contingent upon a result, but the bottom line is it usually comes out right after that Army Navy game.
Yeah, we still don't know. Army, of course, has got to beat Hawaii either this week or they got to win the Navy game for bowl eligibility.
Actually, they have to win both of them because they're playing 13 games, 2 of them which were FCS opponents who they beat. So the caveat there being, if you're going to play 2 FCS opponents, you have to win 7 games rather than 6. So this will be a huge game for Army when they go to Hawaii this weekend, and then obviously when they play Navy to end the season.
Yeah, I actually thought that. I mean, you got a Hawaii team coming off a huge win. They're going to the championship game next week. I don't see how they're even going to be remotely focused on this football game. Where you see that's different for what you got today with Cincinnati and Memphis, because there's so many other variables, including the fact that Cincinnati might want home field advantage. Because other times you might say, yeah, but maybe they don't care. They'd really rather focus on next week's rematch. But in this Army Hawaii situation, it's completely different because you can say, yeah, I think Hawaii might take the week off. It is possible.
It's a lot like, as you mentioned, bowl games, and it really ties right back into this game here. And one of our favorite bowl angles or theories had always been to fade a team that had a bowl bid in its back pocket when playing their last game, because they were then in the process of getting everything ready for the trip, getting all, family, friends involved, tickets, yada, yada, all
Yep.
those types of things. And they really weren't as fully focused in that final game as perhaps they should have been. And that might well be the case with Hawaii here, as you mentioned, going on into playing a conference championship game, coming off a clinching win to do just that, and going to be playing a hungry Army football team here. So I think this makes for a pretty nice handicap to Army in this game.
And of course, some big games coming up tomorrow in college football, the big rivalry games and such. But this is an NFL show, so let's get started and talk about the biggest game of the week. And it's a game we agree upon. San Francisco and Baltimore, with the Ravens a 6-point favorite. We're going to both go with San Francisco in this one. You got the number one defense against the number two offense. And I would say 90% of the time, whenever that happens, I tend to take the team with the better defense. The team where you get the best defense against the best offense. I always like going with the best defense in that matchup, and it just so happens that that's the case again this week. San Francisco is 3-0 straight up and against the spread on the road this year as a dog, looking to make it 4-0.
Yeah, this is I think it is obviously the game of the week, if not the year, in the National Football League to date this season here. You've got the number one seed from the NFC playing the number two seed in Frisco and Baltimore. This is very quite possibly a Super Bowl preview type football game. Baltimore comes in here red hot. As you know, the Lamar Jackson train just keeps on rolling. He's become very, very popular with the public for everything that he's done. Last week they set 17 records. Baltimore did in that mauling on Monday Night Football. Uh, the bottom line to me in this game, though, is what goes up usually comes down, and it'll usually come down against a team that has a defense like San Francisco does,
Yep.
just number one, the best defense in the National Football League. So I can see Lamar Jackson coming back to earth in this football contest. The other part of the equation is this. A couple of people I've talked to this week have been concerned about this West Coast to East Coast for San Francisco being the early start. But the DeBartolo family, for as long as they've owned San Francisco, and it's now the Yorks, the daughters, and the son-in-laws, and so forth and whatnot, they've always made it a point that when they do go west to east, they would always stop over in Youngstown, Ohio, which was the home of Eddie DeBartolo, and he had a facility built for the football team there, and
All
they'll
right.
stay and practice there. So they arrived there like Tuesday of this week.
Nice.
So they get themselves acquainted for this time change. So I don't think it's going to really affect them. They've been in the Eastern time zone 3 times this year. They've won all three of those football games. So I think that's a moot point. You can throw that out and just look at the teams, the way they're going to line up. I think this is, like I say, Super Bowl preview, and you're taking 6 points with the number one defense. I'll always be taking the points in a case like that.
Absolutely. And a good test for Lamar Jackson against that type of a defense, and also a good test for Garoppolo to see if he has what it takes to win a game like this, to perform well, I should say, in a game like this. Not win a sloppy game where the defense wins it, but actually make some plays on the road against a very good football team. And if he could do that, then I think he's going to make. I think there are a lot of people who already believe that the Niners are right there at the top as far as Super Bowl contenders in the NFC. But to be true believers, I think you have to see Garoppolo come up with some big plays in a big game. So that's what. And again, Lamar Jackson against a strong defense. It should be real interesting to see how both quarterbacks participate in a game like this. And they're both young and inexperienced in these big games, and I think it's exciting for the NFL.
It would be a big notch in the belt for Jimmy Garoppolo to come up big in a football game like this. No question about that. It then legitimizes him as being a playoff worthy type quarterback. And almost odd to say, but maybe a bigger game for Garoppolo than it is for Lamar Jackson, who right now is just reaping all the headlines,
Hmm.
while Jimmy G is still asserting himself in the National Football League. So again, I think this has the makeup of obviously the game of the week, if not the game of the year in the NFL this season.
And taking a look at the second game on our list happens to be another huge game in the NFC. Minnesota and Seattle on Monday night. Now, I'm not surprised you're taking the Vikings because you take the Vikings almost every week. That's the Mike Zimmer rule.
Yes,
But
it is.
yes, but this is definitely one of those matchups. This is actually one of those matchups that everything that I look for that when you're talking about several factors like Vikings have dropped 8 straight covers on the road on Monday Night Football. Kirk Cousins is 0-7 straight up on Monday Night Football. Seattle, NFL best 28-5-1 record, including 2-0 this year straight up in primetime games under Pete Carroll since he took over in 2010, and 18-2 straight up at home in a primetime game, including 2-0 this including 1-0 this year with their win over the Rams. It's a 3-point spread, so we're not asking a whole lot of points. That's why I kind of bring up some of those straight up scenarios. So that combination is just too. It's almost too easy for me that I'm scared to take Seattle. I'm taking them, of course, and I'm high on them because I just think they're a better team than Minnesota. But those factors are just so juicy for me that it almost seems too good to be true. But you're going to rain on my parade, aren't you?
A little bit here. Get the umbrella ready. It's again, like you mentioned, Mike Zimmer time. He does have revenge from a loss suffered last year against this team. And Mike Zimmer, in an NFL career with revenge outside the conference, 22-9 against the spread, 6-1 when his team's coming off back-to-back wins. You've also got a great stat here for Minnesota where they played exceptionally well with rest. When they have a 666 or better record, they're 11-1 straight up and 9-1-2 to the number. So you've got some countering numbers here to all the good numbers of Seattle that you mentioned here. And you can make cases for both sides in that sense. The bottom line to me in this game here is this: is that if you put this game on a neutral field, it would be a pick 'em, and that's basically what the odds, the line in this game says. Seattle's 3 for the home field here. So you'd be talking about a pick 'em situation here without the benefit of the home field for Seattle. Now, this home field for Seattle, I think, is really overplayed.
Yeah, this year
If
it
the,
has been. Yeah.
for sure, 1-4 to the spread at home this year. They've really not played well at home this football season thus far. And this is a Minnesota football team that just is the type of team that is an underdog in a role that I love playing when they're taking a short amount of points where everybody wants to begin to make a case for the opponent. And I think this is where they step up and shine. Now, I'm not a huge Kirk Cousins fan. I'm a huge Russell Wilson fan. But in this particular football game here, Russell Wilson is not taking points in this football game. He's a terrific underdog, mediocre as a favorite here, and I'll play Minnesota in the revenge spot in this game.
Just so you know, Seattle, as of right now, is my pick to win the Super Bowl.
Well, if you can keep Jadeveon Clowney healthy, I would not disagree with that. I mean, he's a horse on defense, a monster on defense, and Russell Wilson's having an MVP type year.
Yeah.
Albeit right now for the circus that's taking place in Baltimore with Lamar Jackson, but he's had the steadier season for sure. I wouldn't be surprised at all to see Seattle in the Super Bowl as well. Nor would I be surprised to see Minnesota in the Super Bowl here, but it would have to mean Kirk Cousins would have to step up his game immensely between now and the end of the season.
Yeah, this is one of those games for Kirk Cousins that if he wins, he completely changes the narrative.
Exactly.
Beats the team on the road, Monday night prime time, against a good football team. I mean, he could just wipe away a lot of that stuff, which would be very important come playoff time.
Exactly, and that he knows that, and the Minnesota team knows that. The other part of the equation is Minnesota runs the ball really, really well, and you'd like short dogs that can run the football. Not that Seattle can't stop the run; it's just that Minnesota can control the time of possession in this football game, and if they can do just that, I think this game goes down to whoever scores last.
All right, back onto a game we agree on, and we've got Cleveland and Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh. And I also wanted to ask you before we dive into this game to talk a little bit about division teams that play a second time in 3 weeks. There. I know there are some stats out there, and of course doesn't happen a lot, but I mean, it's 2 and 3 weeks, especially. It's unusual, but we are seeing, and I don't know if this is something that's happened over the last several years, but this year I've noticed there are a lot of divisional matchups that are just beginning. So we're seeing a lot of teams that'll be playing each other twice in a short period of time. But this one, 2 in 3 weeks. And is there a favorite team to go on under that scenario?
Well, this will be the second of those scenarios this football season here. And there's going to be one more. So we're going to have three of them
Okay.
exactly this football season here. And what we did was we ran it through our database, and we found that if you go back to 2012, there have been an instance where 13 of those teams were at home who lost on the road the first game, like Pittsburgh did at Cleveland
Okay.
in that Helmet Gate loss. When those home teams are playing with revenge in this short turnaround division rematches, the home teams are 10-3 straight up and against the spread,
Okay.
with short revenge in this football situation here, a short time turnaround in this situation here. So that does favor Pittsburgh in this football game. And the other part of this story is that I'm from Cleveland, and I do a lot of shows in Cleveland, and I'm supposed to be backing Cleveland all the time, which I don't do.
Oh, come on. You're a
I'm not real.
handicapper.
I'm not real popular there, right?
Yeah.
But
What are you? You're not the president of the Cleveland Browns fan club.
that's exactly right. You can't handicap with your heart.
No.
But the bottom line again here is that everybody in Cleveland feels like this is Cleveland revenge, because Myles Garrett was taken out of his job for the whole season here.
Yeah. Nice.
Cleveland
Nice
beat
try.
Cleveland beat Pittsburgh
Yeah.
here.
Exactly. Nice try.
Okay? So if I'm Pittsburgh, I'm talking number one about the revenge, and number two about the fact that they skulled my quarterback with a helmet.
That's right.
So Pittsburgh's going to be up for this football
Absolutely.
game. Believe me, big time. And I think it's a good move also what Mike Tomlin did in going to Duck Hodges in this game here. He can always go back to Mason Rudolph if things don't work out well. And that would be, I think, an impetus that would really spur this football team if he came off the bench and helped rally this team around, because with him coming off the bench, they'll play around him. I don't think he's much of a quarterback. In fact, I think he's rather stiff. I don't think he's accurate. I think he's got lead feet. But the bottom line, again, here is Pittsburgh has been winning with him, but Tomlin made a good move here. He sees the inadequacies of, if you will, Rudolph, and I think it's a good move for this football team just to let it play out as it is. But I do like Pittsburgh to get their revenge in the short turnaround series.
I also like taking teams that are getting points from teams that are historically losers in that series, and everybody should know by now this week that Cleveland has not beaten Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh since 2003, and they have not swept Pittsburgh in a season series since 1988. That's over 30 years, and Cleveland's favorite. So anytime I can get points in scenarios like that, I am gobbling. It's still kind of, I'm having turkey in a little while. I'm going to gobble this pick all the way through till Sunday and take 3 points. I feel like a bank robber. I'm stealing 3 points here.
Well, if you read our newsletter, Greg, we talk about one thing that we commonly like hitting on. It's called DIA, D-I-A, and it's an acronym for what I use. It's called Dog in Action Doing It Again. A dominating dog in action doing it again. And that's exactly the scenario you just laid out. Pittsburgh has been favored over Cleveland like forever, okay? The last time Cleveland was favored in Pittsburgh was 1989 when Bernie Kosar beat Bubby Brister when Kosar was a 2-point favorite in the football game. They've been underdog 27 games in a row in Pittsburgh, okay? So there's a lot of history that Cleveland's going to have to overcome in this game, and not just the history, but also what we just talked about, this quick turnaround with revenge to Pittsburgh in the game. I think the number is all wrong in the contest here. There's people in Vegas that think Cleveland is a team on the come right now. You might not, maybe you can't argue against that. They're winning some pretty good football games right now, but they're still Cleveland, and this is still Pittsburgh, and the game's in Pittsburgh. I can only look at Pittsburgh plus the points.
And a couple more here. Mike Tomlin, 6-0-1 against the spread in his last 7 in December games as a dog. And the Steelers are 11-1 ATS last 12 at home off of a division game with revenge versus a division opponent. They've also covered the 3-0-1 as a dog this year. Pittsburgh is. So they're getting pretty much 3 points right now. And needless to say, we've made our point in who we both like. Let's talk about a game we do not agree on. Not a surprise. You've been anti-New England this year in a lot of games. Patriots are a 3.5-point favorite here. To me, there's a couple of factors. One I looked up myself. Belichick has won all 5. He's covered 4 of 5 versus O'Brien, his former assistant coach, including the 2016 playoff game. 4 of those 5 were at home. So this is, of course, in Houston on Sunday night. But one of the other things that is very important is Stephon Gilmore is having a huge season for New England at corner. And I was thinking the other day, how would Houston's offense play if Hopkins got injured? Like, what exactly would they do if he was out for a few weeks? And we got this one-game situation where he's not getting injured, but Gilmore, I suspect he's going to do a good job. Now, he may give up a touchdown. He may give up 60, 70 yards. But Hopkins is not going to have a field day with Gilmore. It's just not going to happen. I think because of that, Houston's going to have to find other ways. And maybe they can win a 17-13 game. New England hasn't been doing much on offense. But that matchup, I think, is important. Gilmore also historically has done well against Hopkins in 2 previous matchups. He is not allowed a touchdown against Hopkins in those 2 previous matchups. Houston's also 1-4 ATS at home this year. So that's why I'm going with the Patriots, but you're taking Houston.
Yeah, I'm going to play against what is becoming very apparent, Tom Brady getting longer in the tooth at this stage of his career. In his last 3 games, his passer rating is just 73.9. I don't know if he's had a lower 3-game passer rating than that in his career. So what they're doing to cover up for Tom Brady's inadequacies is they're beginning to run the football a little bit more here to balance the offense and to maybe take the focus off of Brady in particular. They just come off a big game with Dallas here. They're just 1-6 to the spread after taking on Dallas when they take on a non-division opponent here. And if you look at Deshaun Watson, who I really like as a quarterback, I think he's a real sleeper under the radar type quarterback. Mm-hmm. Yes. As an underdog in his career, he's 10-4-1 to the spread, 8-2 in getting 2 or more points. I love the fact this is on Sunday night with the primetime lights on them. I think Houston's got all the makings here of pulling an upset on New England.
Well, this is definitely a huge game for Houston because I think this is the type of game that may decide, to tell you the truth, whether Houston is not just a playoff team but a Super Bowl contender. Because if Indianapolis, which we're going to get to next, wins their game and Houston were to lose and not play particularly well and they don't look like they're ready for prime time, all that stuff, I think Houston might have a hard time making the playoffs. That's how big this game is for Houston. As far as Indianapolis, they just lost to Houston, of course, last week. This is a game we both like. The Colts is a 2.5-point favorite against Tennessee. Now, I've taken Tennessee the last couple of games. I liked them a lot against Jacksonville, and they blew them out. But I'm going to step off of them here because I just think Indianapolis is a better football team. I even expected more from them in the game against Houston. I was a little disappointed in how they played. But then again, T.Y. Hilton had a couple of bad drops. He's not playing in this game. But the Colts, I just think, are a better football team. They've won and covered against Tennessee the last 3 games, including earlier this year. They're 3-1 straight up, 4-0 against the spread versus division opponents this year. And you date back over the last 10 versus division opponents, the Colts have won 8 out of 10, and they're 8-1-1 against the spread.
I'm going to go so far as to say this, Greg. This is a matchup of 2 teams that are right on the cusp of being a playoff team. Colts are currently the number 8 seed. Tennessee's the number 9 seed. So this is going to go a long way towards determining who is going to get out of that AFC South. But I will say this: whoever it is that gets out of the AFC South will be a one and doneer in the playoffs. I think they're mediocre, average teams at best. Yes, they've got winning records, and yes, Ryan Tannehill has turned Tennessee around, but it's nothing that's going to scare an opponent. That goes deep into the end of the season into the playoffs. I'm going to lean to the Colts in this football game here, just a lean. One, because of the history, as you mentioned here, they've all beat them 6 of the last 7 times to the number inside the history here. And yes, Tennessee does have revenge from a 2-point loss suffered earlier this year when Marcus Mariota was behind center, not Ryan Tannehill. So there's some incentive here for Tennessee. But I think the Colts at home in this football game play a better brand than they do on the road here. With Jacoby Brissett being back in the lineup here, I think he solidifies and stabilizes this team. Slight lean to me to the Colts in the contest.
And I think the move to Tannehill was definitely a great move, and it looks like he's. I haven't seen Ryan Tannehill look this excited. He just looks like a nice fit with this organization. Marcus Mariota will probably be playing somewhere else next year because I don't.
Yeah,
I think he needs a change of scenery.
Yeah, he's at the end of his contract year, so he will definitely be somewhere else next year. And a little bit surprising in that this is a contract year, and you usually see good efforts from star players in their contract year because they want to obviously
Well, you hit
enhance.
it on the head, though. He's not a star player.
Yeah, well, that's true. Yeah, he
There
is
you go.
not. And you can maybe take that case to go all the way back to the year he was drafted out of Oregon, maybe just a little bit overrated, and has never lived up to that potential in the NFL.
And by the way, Tennessee in their next 4 games, they got to play Houston twice, and they got to play at Oakland, and they got to host New Orleans. So Tennessee's got some really tough games coming up. If they're going to have a chance, they better win this game. By the way, they're 1-17 against the spread. Tennessee, off in their last 18, off a double-digit straight-up win versus a conference opponent, including 0-1 this year. Let's talk about a game we disagree on. The AFC West division is up for grabs, believe it or not, on Sunday. You're taking the Chiefs. I'm taking the Raiders. And I'm just not completely sold. This is kind of a mark on the Chiefs because the Raiders, their defense, as I talked about last week when we both liked the Jets in that matchup, and we saw during the game, their defense is just, they got too many injuries to key guys. They're vulnerable, no question about it. But I suspect they're going to bounce back in this game because I just don't believe in the Chiefs as much as maybe anywhere near the type of team that they were last year. I know Andy Reid and how he is after buys and all that, but they're 1-2 straight up, 0-3 against the spread in their last 3 home games as a favorite. And look, you just brought it up before, and you like to bring this up a lot. Kansas City ranks 30th in rushing defense, and they're going to go up against the number 5 rusher in the NFL, rookie Josh Jacobs. I think the Raiders are going to keep this close. This is actually the only straight-up upset play I have all week. I'm going to take the Raiders to pull off the upset, but you're going to go ahead, take the Chiefs, and lay the 10.
Well, I'm going to lean to the Chiefs and lay the 10 here. I'm probably not going to reach in my pocket to do just that. In our write-up in the Playbook newsletter, we basically called out the fact of Andy Reid's numbers with rest in a football game and the fact that it's our belief that Oakland will be going backwards rather than moving forward after their surprisingly good start throughout the first half of the football season here. I think there's a football team that's going to be in regression here and probably is as we're talking about this football game. So a combination of those two factors got us leaning to Kansas City here. But you're not going to see me getting there because, number one, it's a division game. I don't want to lay double digits in a situation like this. And the other part of the equation, which maybe supports your side of the football game, is it goes back to the Baltimore Ravens game in their big win over the Rams. And it fits the mantra of you're never as good as you look in your best victory, nor are you as bad as you look in your worst loss. And Oakland looked pretty bad against the New York Jets last week. So that red-faced embarrassing loss could end up helping them step up a little bit. But I'm still waiting to see whether or not Kansas City is going to make their push with a supposed healthy Patrick Mahomes. We're going to find that out this Sunday here. But I'm going to lean slightly to Kansas City because of Andy Reid in the rest situation.
Yeah, look, if just take a look at Patrick Mahomes' last 5 games. If you throw out the Tennessee game, where he put up big numbers and they lost. He threw for 72% of his passes. In the other 4 games, he's completed 59%, 57%, 56%, and 54% of his passes. That's bad. And that's really bad for Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid.
Those are Josh Allen-like numbers. That's what he had at Wyoming in his career. At
Yeah,
Wyoming, he was
right.
a 53% career passer, but he still made it to the National Football League somehow. These are not Patrick Mahomes type
No.
numbers. So, he's obviously been playing either with injury or something's not right with him, and that's what remains to be seen here is whether or not Patrick Mahomes is right. Because when he's right, he's awfully difficult to beat, and when he's not, they're just an average football team.
Quickly, a few others. We agree on Tampa Bay. They're a 1-point favorite. They were a 1-point dog, but I'm really high on Tampa Bay. I think Jacksonville's. I think they're done because I think Maroney's done. I think there's no question he's going to be gone at the end of the year. They've lost their last 3 by a 101-36 margin. They're 1-9 straight up ATS their last 10 versus NFC South teams, including 0-2 this year. And then the other game that I like that you don't like is I'm taking Green Bay over the Giants, but you like the Giants. I'm taking the Packers. They're 4-0 straight up and against the spread their last 4 following a loss, including 2-0 this year with LaFleur and with Aaron Rodgers. The Giants have lost 7 straight. They're also 1-8 against the spread as a home dog under Pat Shurmur.
Well, the thing with the Green Bay Packers is that there are 2 teams. We do a midweek alert newsletter. It's our statistical newsletter that we put out during the middle of the week. It's kind of like a racing form. We can compare side by side ongoing progression of team stats throughout the season. And there are 2 teams in the National Football League this year that really stick out amongst one another when it comes to talking statistics. One of them is the Green Bay Packers, who, despite having 8 wins in the season, have been outgained in 7 football games this year. They're literally winning games with smoke and mirrors. They've also got a very shoddy, weak rush defense. A lot like New England's weak rush defense, a lot like Kansas City's weak rush defense. So, too, is the case in this particular football game. So I think they're a smoke and mirrors type team. Hence my lean to the Giants here. I don't want to lay points on the road with a team like that. The other team, I'll say this, that jumps out of our midweek alert statistics is the fact that you've got a football team this year that is 6-6 in the season, but they've won the yards 10 or 11 of their 12 games. 11 out of 12 times they've won the yards, but they've lost 6 football games. And I'm talking about the Clapper, Jason Garrett, and the Dallas Cowboys, who are getting the job done on the field where they're supposed to get the job done, outplaying and outperforming teams in the field, but Jason Garrett is not doing his job. That's just my editorial here. I think the Clapper is soon to be an ex-head football coach in the National Football League, and it was disgusting to watch what happened on Thanksgiving Day, to watch them put up more yards again than Buffalo and lose in the manner in which they did. I think he's a coach that's lost his confidence, and the team has lost confidence in him. And I think sooner or later, Jerry Jones is going to have to come to that realization.
Yeah, what a bad division that is this year.
Yes, it is.
I mean, the team who comes out of that division, boy, they're going to be so one and done. It's going to make everybody's head spin. Whoever gets to play them, well, they're going to end up like probably a 4 seed, which means that that means that they're going to play the 5 seeds. Whoever, when you get into that last week of the season, teams are going to be looking at the seeding and they go, how can we get the Cowboys or the Eagles in that first week? That's
exactly.
That's going to be. And speaking of the Eagles, before I let you go, that's the trend of the week, isn't it? With the Eagles covering 14 straight games away after they score 10 points or less.
Yeah, they've done a terrific job of bouncing back in this sense here. Now, down here in Miami, I can assure you this, at the airport yesterday, we had friends come in from Philadelphia, and it's going to be nothing but Eagles fans at Hard Rock Stadium in Miami. There's nobody going to the Dolphins games other than visiting team support, and they're down here in droves from Philadelphia this weekend because of the weather. Number one, it's gorgeous. Number 2, it's Thanksgiving week.
Yeah.
And number 3, again, they could care less about the Dolphins. So you're going to see more of a home game for the Eagles here than you will for Miami here. And it wouldn't surprise me if the Eagles finally step up and crush somebody this weekend.
Yeah, and you know what? And it probably wouldn't surprise us either if the Dolphins won, because that's how bad the Eagles have played. But their schedule, they play the Dolphins, the Redskins, they get the Giants twice, and then of course the Cowboy game, which could decide the division. That's an easy schedule, man. If the Eagles can't find a way to win the division, I don't know. 8-8 is going to win that division probably.
Yeah, nobody wants to win the division, it appears right now in the NFC East. And like you say, whoever does, whoever emerges on top there, is not going to be really playoff fodder type of a football team unless they really get their act together between now and the end of the season here. And I just don't see that happening between, if you will, the Giants, the New York Giants in particular, or the Dallas Cowboys.
Mark, enjoy the weekend, including the huge day tomorrow. I'm a Michigan fan, so it's a huge day for me. I've gone against Michigan a few times this year. Earlier in the season when they weren't playing well, I had Wisconsin as a 5-star. I had Army beating them, and they almost did. But lately, I've been taking them because they're playing the best football that they've played under Jim Harbaugh, and I think this is it. I think they're going to get it done. Don Brown, when you see him going up against athletic quarterbacks in the Ohio State series, that's when he's caused problems for the Buckeyes. There's no Haskins for the Buckeyes on Saturday. I think the Wolverines are going to get it done, but that's me.
Well, I'm from Ohio, and I agree with you.
Oh, okay. There you go.
I agree. This is a nice spot for Michigan this particular weekend here. Ohio State's going to want to come to play because of this back and forth #1 ranking in the college football playoff polls with them and LSU. So the Buckeyes will be focused in the game, but I think this is the best chance Jim Harbaugh has of pulling the rug out on Ohio State, and I feel this game will come down to whoever scores last.
And as always, great job, Mark. Again, hope you continue to enjoy as many leftovers from yesterday as you can possibly handle. And we'll talk to you next week as long as you survive the week.
I will do just that, Greg. Have a great week. Enjoy the games. Be well.